James Gunn just officially announced the sequel to Superman releasing in 2027 titled Man of Tomorrow. And in today's video we are going to be discussing this announcement and all of the behind the scenes photos taken from the set of Clayface. Over the last couple of weeks, James Gunn has been teasing us with the information that the follow-up for Superman will be releasing very soon. And today we were given not only a release date, but also a subtitle for the movie. Man of Tomorrow, or Superman Man of Tomorrow, will release in theaters July 9th, 2027. Now, this is really important information for a few reasons. With the DC universe just getting started, there was kind of a fear that with all of the different projects that were originally announced back in 2023, that DC would kind of face the same problems Marvel is currently going through. And that main problem being not seeing certain characters for extended periods of time. I've talked about it before, but in the Infinity Saga, most of the central protagonists to the Avengers would make an on-screen appearance at least once every year or once every other year. But currently, Marvel is facing a problem where because of the projects they're releasing, certain characters who are supposed to be the main characters of the Marvel Cinematic Universe currently are leaving 4 to 5 year gaps in between their on-screen appearances. Sam Wilson as Captain America is a great example, along with Shang-Chi, Hawkeye, Doctor Strange. There are so many major players of the Avengers that we are supposed to reconnect with next year in Doomsday that have not had their time in the spotlight during the multiverse saga. Now, when James Gunn first revealed the Chapter 1 slate of his DC Universe reboot, it did seem like they could have potentially ran into the same problems that Marvel is currently going through. We can only get so many projects featuring however many characters each year. So many people were worried that because a Superman sequel wasn't yet announced, we would have to wait to get through the entire slate of projects James Gunn announced all the way back in 2023 before we got a true sequel to Superman. Luckily, that is not the case. Many people will point to Superman and say it's a box office disappointment, it's essentially a bomb, but the fact that the movie already has a sequel in development with a release date that soon just goes to show how well Superman did and the potential WB sees in the character, somebody who has been mistreated by that movie studio for so long. Now let's discuss the movie itself very briefly, because we only have this one photo to go off of. It seems like confirmation that Lex Luthor is either going to be exonerated for the crimes he committed in Superman, or he'll be escaping from Reeves. Maybe Peacemaker will enlighten us on that a little bit, but the most exciting prospect of this is the fact that Lex Luthor is going to be getting his power armor in a live action movie, something that people have been wanting to see for decades. There was a lot of speculation that we would see it in Superman based on certain toy sets, but toys based on movies always create additional figures and characters or even costumes that don't appear in the actual movie. You're not going to make Lex Luthor wearing his business attire fight Superman. I mean, come on, he's got to wear his power armor. But with non-comic readers, the general audience primarily finally taking Lex Luthor as a serious threat for Superman to go up against after this last movie, they're going to be in for a real treat when Man of Tomorrow releases. There's not much more to discuss here. I mean, this news itself was a big surprise to see this afternoon. James Gunn has been doing a terrific job with his new DC universe so far. I'm glad to see Superman is finally being prioritized as a character, and that a follow-up to Superman doesn't need to include Batman in order to get people on board. That's all I have to say about that, but speaking of Batman, Clayface has begun filming earlier this week. And we've received full confirmation from behind-the-scenes photos that the movie is going to be set in Gotham City. We've seen all kinds of things from the movie already, including a map of Gotham City, some newspaper props that were printed for the set, some of the Gotham police vehicles, and some photos of Tom Reese-Harris as Clayface. Now, I do want to discuss each of these details individually because I do think that it does paint some connections to the DC universe and really drives home the point that this is not the same universe as Matt Reeves' The Batman epic crime saga. First and foremost, we have our map of Gotham, looks completely different than it did in The Batman or The Penguin. The Gotham police vehicles are also entirely different from what we saw in either of Matt Reeves' Batman projects. again solidifying the fact that the DCU is going to have its own completely different Batman than Robert Pattinson. I know many people did want Robert Pattinson to be brought over to the DCU, and if that's really what you were looking forward to, then I apologize. But I think that version of the character works better in the universe they created for him, and I'm interested in seeing what direction James Gunn decides to take Batman in the DCU, along with the direction Gotham City will go in. So far we've seen some graffiti that alludes to the Joker, and on the map of Gotham City I was just talking about, we get mentions of some of the most iconic locations in the city. Now, a big discussion is what time period is Clayface going to be set in. Originally, James Gunn said the chronology of the DC universe is going to be in release order. This was originally said over the confusion created by Rick Flag Sr.'s hair in Creature Commandos being significantly whiter than it was in Superman and Peacemaker Season 2, but James Gunn has since compared the DC universe to something like Star Wars rather than the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where they can kind of jump around the timeline depending on the story they're telling. Now, I think Clayface is probably going to be set at the earliest point of the DC Universe timeline so far. I've seen some people agree with that due to the fact that we did just recently see Clayface make an appearance in Creature Commandos. However, that's not my reasoning. There are so many characters in the DC Universe with the same power set that all go by Clayface. Two of the most well-known versions of this character are Matt Hagen and Basil Karlo. Now, this movie itself is going to be based off the Batman the Animated Series episode Feet of Clay, which uses the Basil Karlo backstory for the character. However, they change his name to Matt Hagen. I'm pretty sure that the Clayface we met in Creature Commandos is going to end up being a different version than the one we meet in the Clayface movie next year, but I also do think that this version of Clayface is most likely a prequel to everything that we've seen so far. But not by much. I'm willing to bet that this movie is going to take place around a decade before Superman. The Gotham Examiner newspaper that we've seen in some of these set photos doesn't have a specific date or day on it. However, it is priced at 75 cents. Compare this to the Daily Planet issues we saw in Superman that were priced around $8.50. Now, I can imagine many viewers of this video have probably never bought a newspaper a day in their life, but about 10 years ago when I worked at a gas station that sold newspapers, there was not a single newspaper I've sold that cost less than $1. And I can imagine that rings true for a city like Gotham. But also, given the story that the movie will follow, and the lack of including Batman in this movie, I'm pretty sure that we're either going to be seeing a pre-Batman Gotham City, or at the very least this is set during the early days of Batman, where he's still handling organized crime and maybe has a few supervillains here or there. But that's all I have to say about these topics. Let me know what you think down in the comments below about either Clayface or Superman Man of Tomorrow. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more content, and I will see you in the next video.